The Navy is like a little family on board the ship. Out at sea, when you are in charge, you are truly in charge. You really make decisions. There's nobody you can refer to other than yourself when it comes to making that final decision. And if anything does happen, you truly take responsibility of the men and the crew and the ship. So there really isn't any other fallback. But in the corporate world, it's a little bit, a bit like a jungle. You don't really know what's going to happen. You've kind of got to trust your instincts sometimes. You've got to trust the people that are with you to give you the right advice. You've got to trust the data, whereas in the Navy, you've already been trained to know where to look for the information, but there is still a small element maybe of instinctive decisions that you might make, but it's always backed with the training that you've been given. I don't give up easily. I'm very persistent. When I decide on doing something, I will definitely put my mind and my energy and I will carry people along with me. Everything is a journey. You can't take the journey alone. I think if you don't run good operations and tight operations, you can't get to that next level, which is then the customer experience component.
I could not wait to hit the record button today, because my guest is an incredible woman who has achieved extraordinary success in both military and corporate fields. Yin Neo is the CEO of Singapore Post. She started out studying occupational psychology, but then she didn't become a doctor. She chose to join the Navy. And she had 17 years of distinguished military career, earning numerous leadership positions, including being the commanding officer of a ship. Then she took her talents to Changi Airport, which is one of the top airports in the world, where she was responsible for ground operations and customer experience. Now, as a CEO of the top 10 postal services in the world, Singapore Post, she has incredible insights to share. We had a very captivating discussion, and I can't wait to share it with you. My name is Ani Filipova, and this is Change is Possible podcast. While you're listening or watching, please subscribe or leave us a comment. Thank you very much. Hi, Yin. I'm so happy that you're on my podcast. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation. How are you today?
Good. Nice to meet you, Ani. I think it's thank you so much for inviting me on your podcast. It's a great pleasure. So anyway, my name is Yin, and I'm the CEO for Singapore Post.
Singapore Post. And I used to live in Singapore, and I'm telling you, Singapore Post is one of the best in the world. I don't want to say the best, but yeah, one of the best in the world.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Okay, let's start with just starting from the beginning. If you can tell us a little bit about your bringing childhood and all these experiences that led you to decide to join the Navy. This is the first step.
I think I don't think I actually ever thought about joining the armed forces, but I've always been a very active person. I had the opportunity to take on many leadership roles when I was growing up in school. So I was a prefect, I was a vice captain of the team. I had always a lot of opportunity to take on leadership roles. I was even the secretary of the Students' Council. So I've always had opportunities where I led people. And I guess when it came to the A-level exams, that was the opportunity for us to think about, what university we wanted to go to, what courses we wanted to take, what scholarships we wanted to take. And this scholarship letter actually came along the way in the mail, and I was invited to go for a scholarship talk with the Singapore Armed Forces. And it was interesting that my father actually at that point in time said, this sounds really suitable for you. At that point in time, actually, I was thinking of becoming a doctor because I was doing triple science in school and things like that. But he said, just go listen, and then you never know what might come out of it. I said, so okay, so we went to have a look. And it was really interesting because at that point in time, there were, I think, the first few inaugural batches of female officers in the Singapore Armed Forces. And I thought it was really cool. And what was more interesting was the lady who was speaking to us at the conference. You couldn't tell she was someone that would join the Armed Forces. She was very demure, and yet she was able to put herself through the paces of basic military training. So I thought, anyway, since I wasn't going to go to school for another 9 months before school opens, why not give it a go and give it a try? And even if it doesn't work out, I can still apply for the courses that I intended to anyway. I went in, and I also thought if the boys could do it, I'm not sure why I couldn't. So I wanted to kind of prove to the boys in school that, this is something that I think that, what were you complaining about? Let's go have a look. So I went for the basic military training. It was tough. I didn't expect to miss home so much, but I think the camaraderie that you get with the other girls, and then the training is very progressive. They put us through the paces. They prepared us both mentally and physically for what the task ahead. And we got exposure to the various armed forces. So whether it's the Navy, the Air Force, the Army. And I thought that the Navy at that point in time was very progressive. They had the first female commanding officer of a ship. And I thought that for a service to be so progressive in the way they think and how they view females in the armed forces was something that attracted me to want to sign up for the Navy. So that's how I ended up going to Navy. But before I went officially into the Navy, I had 4 years of studies. I did psychology in University of Nottingham in the UK. And I spent the last year doing my master's in occupational psychology. Yeah, so I came back and served in the Navy. I think it was really fun. It's really tough. We had to keep watch over 24 hours. We had to, try and get the men to understand, our role in the SAF versus that of the male counterparts. Some of them had not very good experiences with previous female officers, so we had to try and gain their respect in how we handled ourselves, how we integrated with them, how did we understand and not force ourselves on them just because we are officers. And I think I won the respect of the men over time. And I truly enjoyed, I think, those experiences we had, because the Navy is like a little family on board the ship. And I truly appreciated all those experiences that I had. The close camaraderie, how we took care of each other, how we were the family away from home that we had. So that was a really good experience for me, I think, in the 17 years I spent in the Navy.
17 years, gosh, that's
yes.
a long period. Is anybody in your family in the military?
No, none at all.
The first person.
None at all. I was the first
that's
one.
Amazing.
Yeah, my father's a banker. My mom was in accounts, so both of them were in the financial services. I have seen no interest in it at all. I'm more of the active kind of person. I can't sit still. Got to keep active on my feet all the time.
And you mentioned that in the Navy there was the first woman officer,
commanding
yes. officer of a ship. So what is this? You were a commanding officer of a ship, also, right? A warship,
Yes.
So what is this? What does this entail? I have absolutely no clue.
When I relate it to my role now, it's actually very different. Out at sea, when you are in charge, you are truly in charge. You really make decisions. There's nobody you can refer to other than yourself when it comes to making that final decision. And I think that's where the responsibility becomes very grave. You're out at sea, you're in the elements, the lives of 30, 40 men are in your hands. Every decision you make, whether it come from a point of safety or from operations, there's no, what my boss used to say, when you look back, there's no one else. It's all you. Whereas in a corporate organization, there are still many safeguards and the safety nets that you can depend on. But out at sea, truly, when you're the commanding officer, you are the one that makes the last call. And if anything does happen, you truly take responsibility of the men and the crew and the ship. So there really isn't any other fallback. So that's how I would say that the responsibility is something that it's very hard. I remember having a conversation with a bunch of C-suites during a course I attended, and I remember telling them that it's really stressful now in the corporate world. And they said, how is that possible? You have been on a ship commanding, in missions and stuff. Wasn't that stressful? I said, well, I think the difference is in those environments, we have been trained. We have been trained in all scenarios. We've done contingency training. We've done emergency training. We've done training over and over again in all the scenarios to make sure that we're prepared to make the right decision. But in the corporate world, it's a little bit, a bit like a jungle. You don't really know what's going to happen. You've kind of got to trust your instincts sometimes. You've got to trust the people that are with you to give you the right advice. You've got to trust the data, whereas in the Navy, you've already been trained to know where to look for the information, but there is still a small element maybe of instinctive decisions that you might make, but it's always backed with the training that you've been given. So I think that's where the difference is, yeah.
You mentioned of some qualities that you learned in the Navy, but what are these top key qualities that you use till now, and they were very good and very helpful in your corporate career?
I would say resilience is definitely one. I don't give up easily. I've been told by my bosses, even my previous bosses before I became CEO, that I don't give up easily. I'm very persistent. When I decide on doing something, I will definitely put my mind and my energy, and I will carry people along with me. I think that's one of the qualities I feel. We generally don't leave people behind. That's something that I think is one of the key qualities. We do think that everything is a journey. You can't take the journey alone. So that's something that I feel I've also learned from the Navy. You can't operate the ship if one person is failing in their role. And likewise, I've carried that also. It's not something that one person can do on their own. You are the one that's leading the charge, but you've got to make sure that everybody who's doing their piece of work is doing it at the best of their ability. Are we training people well enough? Are we giving people the right information? Are we giving people the right equipment for them to do their jobs well in order to make the entire organization come together and then achieve the outcomes that we want? Yeah, so those, I think, are some of the key qualities that I've learned from the Navy and have brought here even into the corporate world. It has served me well. I've left for now coming to almost 7 years, 7 to 8 years already. Yeah, it's been fun, challenging sometimes, but yeah, it's fun.
Let's talk about your another transition and another change you made. It's the transition from the Navy to Changi Airport, to completely different industry. So how did you plan it? What did you do to prepare yourself? To share with the listeners, because that's an interesting transition from between two very different industries.
Well, the career in the Singapore Armed Forces, well, it's been a very exciting one. I had a great opportunity there to command ships, had the opportunity to do a lot of interesting things. But the career is a short one. So I had seen some of my predecessors and my seniors who left at the retirement age, and had some of them had challenges transiting, and I felt that maybe it would be better for me to transit earlier, given that I wanted to transit earlier at the age where I was able to adapt still learn new things, get in the trenches, get my hands dirty and, learn things on the ground. So I felt that if I had left when I was a bit too senior, it might have been a bit difficult given, the kind of rank that you would go in the corporate world, maybe make it also very difficult for you to want to get to the ground. So I made a very deliberate decision at age 35 to take the leap of faith and transit into the corporate world. But I also had very good advice from a senior. So she had left 10 years from the Air Force. She was a pilot, and she had left earlier. And she gave me very good advice. She did say that if you're going to transit, you must think about where you're transiting to, and how that then positions you for subsequent transitions after leaving and joining the corporate world. And at that point in time, it was also an opportunity that she offered me to join her in the airport. She felt that there were many skills that I had acquired over the years in the kind of projects that I ran, the kind of operations that I run that were of scale, which she thought that would benefit the first department that I joined in the airport. So when I first joined Changi Airport, I joined what we call the T4 Program Management Office. At that point in time, the Terminal 4 was being built and they was going to go into operations. And then she had plans for some big events that needed to be run, and I had experience in running those huge, large-scale operations and events. So that was when I decided to join her, given that there were immediate applicable skills that I could apply in that role. But that role was going to be a short one. It was already been discussed that after a year, I would have to consider where I would be transiting to. And I thought that given my operational experience, I could pick up and learn quite quickly the airport operations. So I had asked for, after a year, after completing the tour in the program management office, to then transit to the airport operations team. And that's where I took on the role to run the ground operations for the 4 terminals and customer service. So I think operations for me, generally, it's all about process. So if you are a process-driven person, I think no matter what kind of organization you go to, it's just a matter of learning the terminology, I think the nature of the operations, and then trying to see the process that's behind it, the putting in standard operating procedures. It's just about the discipline. And I felt that that's what the armed forces gave me, that discipline to be very clear about how operations are being run, how processes are being run, and how you follow to that clearly, so that keeps people safe, that keeps operations running well. And then how do you then take that view of how do you review that frequently to make sure that constantly, as things changes, as the environment evolves, how do you then adjust that to then suit a new set of operations? So I think that also worked quite well for me. Where it was interesting for me was learning the whole customer experience. And Changi obviously prides itself in very strong customer experience. And I think that's where I learned the most. I learned about that view on excellence, what is great. I think some of the senior leadership in Changi Airport really gave me a wonderful view of what great really is, what great service is, what great customer experience is, what putting the customer first means. And that really helped me, I think, when the job offer to come to SingPost to do customer experience, gave me that insight to how, what great really looks like, and how do you then look at operations and customer experience together as one. It is not just about buying the most sophisticated technology and all, but it's how do you weave that technology together with operations to then be able to deliver that wonderful customer experience, and putting always the customer's needs first ahead of sometimes the business. Because naturally, if the customer chooses you, it translates into a business outcome.
That's absolutely correct. And Changi Airport is the best airport in the world. I've been to many. I've traveled to 80 countries in the world, and the Singapore one is like classes above any other. So you then transitioned to the post office, and there was obviously customer experience. That was the common kind of topic, right? But again, one is, I know it's a process, but one is an airport, the other one is a post office, right? It's very, very different. What was the learning curve when you joined the post?
It was interesting because when I first joined, at that point in time, I was headhunted to join Singapore Post because they were experiencing some service issues at that point in time. That was in 2018. When 2018 I was headhunted, 2019 I joined SingPost. Initially, it was really to do at customer experience. But within a very short period of time, my boss said, look, I think you need to take over the operations. That was not the intent. I wanted actually to get out of operations because I was quite tired. Running 24/7 operations can be quite exhausting. So when I came here, when my boss, 3 months into the job, he said, why don't you take over the delivery operations? I was a bit hesitant at first, but I did see the value. I think if you don't run good operations and tight operations, you can't get to that next level, which is then the customer experience component. So I did see value in doing that. Why I would say that the transition was challenging but not difficult was because I think the foundation that I had gotten from the armed forces and from the airport is in the armed forces, you basically run operations with a lot of people. Likewise, in my business here, it is a very heavily manned business, which means what you need to take care of is you need to look at the hygiene issues that are faced by the people. What are some of the morale issues? In the Singapore Armed Forces, I think some of the values that we carry is care for soldier. Actually, that is really fundamental. When you care for your people, it's not just about showing the emotive care, but it's also about, do you care about their well-being? Do you care about their safety? Do you care about the things that they are, the equipment that they're using? What is the quality of the environment that they're operating out of? So I think those were some of the very basic things that I took from my training in the past into the operating environment here, and then taking that the operational eye that I've developed over the multiple jobs that I've done, and applied it here, and focus a lot on just improving the operations first, improving the hygiene issues first. And that quickly, well, I won't say quickly, that took time to put in place, but that was really the key thing that really turned the entire operations around. And that's where slowly we could start to look at improving the customer experience. Then that's where looking at the technology piece, looking at the, I applications that we're using, the kind of customer touch points that we have, then that becomes important. Because if you can't even get your baseline, which is delivering an item to the customer on time, there's no need to talk about everything else. Everything else will be just seem to be a waste of money if you didn't deliver your basic service well. So that was what we focused our energy on.
What is your system of transition to a new industry, a new job? What do you do in the first 30 days, in the first 60 days, in the first 90 days?
Interestingly, I shared this with a bunch of young executives. I said, generally in the first 30 days, I don't say much. I just observe. I spend time on the ground. I talk to a lot of people. I just want to understand, I just want to understand what's going on, before I even make any conclusions, jump to any conclusions or make any decisions. Because I think if you don't understand and you make decisions, you might actually be making the wrong ones. Secondly is to gain trust. I think it's important because you've got to show people that you're willing to understand where they are coming from. You've got to gain their trust because if you're going to make change, or you're going to make drastic change, you've got to have the trust of people to believe that whatever change you're making is really going to make things better. Then next part is to find who are the people that you can bring on board with you to then help you to carry out the change. So that's also something that you've, in terms of building relationships, and that normally takes maybe, 90 days even, to get to that kind of point of understanding people. So generally, this is how I would plan my time. I would say by 3 months, if you don't have a good sense of where things are, you probably can't move much. 30 days, I already think that 90 days is generally a good sense of understanding the business, getting a sense of where people are, what is the morale on the ground, what can be improved, what cannot be improved, where are your challenges. Yeah. So that's how I would probably plan my time. And by 6 months, I would have a plan of the trajectory ahead.
I really relate to what you said about the first 30 days. You listen and you don't say a lot. Because if you start talking, you're missing so much.
You're missing a lot. That's right.
You've gone through so much change, actually, when you think about it. On average, compared to an average person, you've done so many very kind of profound changes. What is that most challenging time, most challenging change, and what was that most challenging problem and how did you overcome it?
I actually think that the most challenging change for me is the most recent one, which is becoming a CEO. I've always been the guy on the ground, understanding how everything works, driving the change, and being the one that's actually moving the things. I'm still learning, and I think it's been a very interesting evolution for me as well. Understanding what my role is as a CEO versus that of a BU head or an operational head, because very clear KPIs that I have to hit, or very clear actions I have to take, very clear objectives I have to reach. Whereas now a lot of the skills are softer, managing stakeholders, managing upwards, the management, the board, managing relationships with my peers. And the key thing that I took away is that you don't know everything. You've got to be very open to hearing what people have to say, whether it's good or bad. You take the criticism as it comes. I've learned this in sometimes hard ways, sometimes not the most better way, but I've learned to take the feedback constructively. I've learned that reflection is actually very important when you reach this level. Having someone to discuss this with that's not part of the business helps you to provide like that mirror, to kind of bounce these thoughts off, giving you a different perspective on things. I think sometimes taking a step back, not reacting immediately. I used to be very fast. I'm always very fast. Actually, sometimes it scares my people that I'm so fast. So I actually now slow down quite a bit. Sometimes I even let mistakes happen in order to use it as a learning moment. Of course, you kind of already calculate the risk in your mind, but at least you use those moments and you can actually get a greater outcome rather than trying to fix it at the start. So I'm still learning. I've only been on the role for about a year now, a year and a bit. And I'm actually learning the other qualities that's needed of a CEO and how do I really lead and guide my team my leaders, let them grow in their roles too. Let them step up now instead of being led by me or being told by me what to do, is to lead them to then make decisions that on their own and to let them then drive the outcomes. Give them very clear outcomes for them to achieve, but don't direct how they do it. Yeah, so that's been a huge learning journey for me. It's very different from being a CEO of a ship. Being a CEO of a ship, you're very directive. You can't make mistakes because lives are at stake. But in this environment, it's a little bit different. There are still lives at stake, but I still think that the environment is a bit safer for people to learn. It's also it's still a learning space for me too. Yeah.
Where do you think the future of work is going? In the future, what do you think would be the most sought after qualities for workers, for people?
I would say adaptability. I think COVID has shown us that your operating environment can change very, very quickly. The ability to adapt, to respond, to change your operating environment very, very quickly is something that I think is a very important quality. I think holding on to, past practices is not going to be so common. Like, I mean, having this video call is clearly a very different way of operating. In the past, we would have to fly people across the world to just have a conversation. Now, I can have a conversation with you, and this is the new operating normal. Yeah. So I think where people have to learn to adapt to now is, how do we find where that new normal is? How do we then adjust ourselves to hit the new normal? Because if we don't keep up, the world is changing so quickly. Something happens in another part of the world and it affects us almost immediately. It's no longer such a protected, isolated environment anymore. We're so connected now that any small changes means it could affect us in some way. And if we're not able to adapt quickly to these changes, we will be left behind. So I feel that this is really, truly one of the key things that we need to take care of. Second one, I think, is really about well-being. I think well-being of being able to pick up if there's issues with well-being in your organization is going to be very key. Because there are a lot of, I think, stresses that people are facing that we don't necessarily see anymore. It's not so obvious. So I think these are things that if, as leaders, I think we've got to be a bit more sensitive, more empathetic. Yeah, I think empathy becomes very key moving forward. With the new generation of people that are coming, I think they've been brought up very differently from when you and I were brought up. The kind of, we take hard knocks a lot better. The younger generation may not take hard knocks so well. How do we then mentor? I think we've got to change from being directors to being mentors, to being coaches, to get the same outcome. So I think even the approach we take to dealing with people also has to change with time. So that's why I feel think that the key piece is really about adaptability. How do we change to manage the new operating environment that we're in?
No, absolutely. And just to add to this, awareness and self-awareness. Teach not only we to have self-awareness about our qualities, but also to teach others how they can be self-aware, because that's so important.
That's right.
If you're not aware of your, positives and negatives, how are you going to get better, right?
Yes.
So this is such a fascinating discussion. I wish we had another 2 hours speaking about it, but we are towards the end of the podcast. And traditionally at the end, each of my guests gives 3 top qualities for people who want to change their careers. What is your choice of these top 3?
I would say be open, be adaptable, and be persistent. Because I think these are the 3 things that have helped me a lot over the last, I've been working for how many years now? Almost 20 plus years. I don't always think that you're good at everything that you think that you're doing. Be prepared to take feedback. So be open. Be adaptable, which is then with the feedback you get, how do you then adapt and adjust? And then be persistent. Because giving up is always the easiest way to end the pain. But sometimes the reward requires a painful journey to get there.
So Yin, thank you so much. It was a pleasure
Thank you, Annie.
to talk to you. And I wish you all the best.
You too. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode today. Please remember to review, rate and subscribe when you have a chance. You can do that on your favorite podcast platform or go to our site changeispossible.site. Thank you once again and have a great day.